All right, thank you, Julie. Well, today, President Barack Obama will meet with Senate leaders at the White House. They are trying to work out a deal for cutting government spending while at the same time raising the debt limit. Well, talks between congressional leaders of the House and the Senate reached an impasse, last week over the question of federal revenue. And joining us now is Joseph Schatz, a senior writer covering economic policy and politics at Congressional Quarterly. Thank you for coming in this morning. Let's start off with today's meeting. Last week there was that impasse. People just parted ways, left the negotiations. Do you think things will go a little bit more smoothly today with the president involved?
Well, the stakes are much higher now. And last week, as you mentioned, the Republican negotiators pulled out of the talks led by Joe Biden because of this question of taxes, saying that the president needs to take taxes off the table. As a result, now the president will step in today. He'll meet with the Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid this morning, and then the Minority Leader Mitch McConnell tonight. And I think taxes will be a big issue, whether the president's willing to budge on taxes. Democrats are saying they're willing to make some big spending cuts as a price for getting this debt ceiling passed, but only if Republicans come to the table with some tax increases.
Well, and the other thing, too, that, they might have to come to the table on or with willing to negotiate on is in the past, the GOP really has looked at defense cuts as those things you don't touch, you don't go there. But do you think this time around, with the way things have been going, that they may have to budge on this, and you think they will?
Exactly, yeah. I think defense is on the table in a bigger way than it has been before. There's a new defense secretary in town. The war, President Obama talked about his Afghanistan drawdown plan last week. And I think particularly given that it's going to be difficult to find money in terms of tax increases, I think Democrats are going to demand cuts to defense spending if they're being asked to do cuts on Medicare, Medicaid, domestic programs.
It seems like there really hasn't been a lot that has gotten done, or they just are sort of at this point where no one wants to budge. We have about a month now. We're looking at that August 2nd deadline to raise the debt ceiling. Are you confident that they're going to be able to get something done, or do you think they know that August 2nd we've got to have a deal?
Right. I think everybody's saying that, come August 2nd, there does have to be a deal. The group that was led by Joe Biden did reportedly make a lot of progress in terms of identifying less controversial cuts, probably more than $1 trillion in cuts to farm subsidies, education programs, things like that. So the groundwork has been sort of laid if they can reach a broader deal on Medicare, on taxes, on defense spending. I think the question is whether they can reach a long-term deal in the next few weeks or whether they'll have to resort to a temporary deal to get them into the fall or a few months beyond that.
Do you think it's the way they're going about, because they're meeting separately with Reid and McConnell, is that the better way to go about it and then try to get them to come back together to the table? Or, does it just end up blowing up when everybody kind of gets in the same room?
Well, I think the president has to talk to each of them individually, and probably Speaker Boehner as well in the House, because, when they all get in a room, things can get acrimonious pretty quickly. I think that's what happened with the Biden group. You had both sides in the room, and so there were certain things they just couldn't agree on at the end of the day. Now the president gets involved, and really only he can make the final deal with either side. And so I think that's why they're starting separately, and then I think you'll see them come together if they can find some common ground. If
the deadline hits, there's not a deal, a lot of people say, what is going to happen?
Right. The White House says that it'll basically be a new financial crisis. That if August 2nd comes and goes, the government may go into default, may have to start stopping payments to bondholders, Social Security payments, a variety of government payments. There are some Republicans who question whether that's what really would happen, whether we actually could go into we could fail to raise the debt limit and things might not be so bad. The White House says don't mess with that. Basically, let's not risk that, and is saying that basically, if the debt ceiling is not raised, the default will happen.
And that's the thing. Does either side really even want to chance it? I mean, they don't want to, but do you think it could get to that point?
I think it'll get to the 11th hour, because I think the leadership on both sides knows that they don't want this to happen, but there's a lot of rank-and-file members, particularly in the Republican Party, who are willing to let it get up to the 11th hour. And, these brinksmanship games, it's the same thing that happened on the government shutdown debate earlier this year. Neither side wants to budge until the 11th hour to show that they really went to the mat for their side.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of that for sure. And, of course, we'll be watching, closely as well. Joe Schatz with Congressional Quarterly, thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Steve, over to you.